Hi, I'm Claire, and welcome back to my channel. So this video is for new writers, beginner writers, writers who have just started out on their writing journey, and who want to write their first book. Here's all my advice for you. As you probably know, there is an overwhelming amount of content on YouTube. If you type writing tips into the search bar, it's gonna pull up tons of videos made by tons of writers with all sorts of different ways they like to write. You are going to be presented many different ways to go about doing things as broad as writing dialogue to as specific as outlining second drafts. While it's pretty amazing that this much content exists and is so readily available, it can also be pretty daunting. I didn't watch a lot of YouTube videos on writing when I first started, but I know that if I did, I would have been paralyzed because I would have realized how much I didn't know about writing, and that would have made me feel like I wasn't capable of writing a good book. Something as simple as writing dialogue could have me paralyzed with fear and trying to juggle all of these different little things that I didn't know you had to think about when writing dialogue in order to write good dialogue. Because I didn't want to write a bad book, I probably would not have written a book at all. I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but please remember that in order to be a good writer, you need to allow yourself to fail. I can see how this may seem counterintuitive. Nobody wants to fail. Like, failing isn't fun. And of course you want your first book to be great. Everyone wants their first book to be great. But honestly, because of how much there is to learn about writing, it probably won't be. Mine definitely wasn't. I was really proud of that book, and I'm still really proud of that book. But there were a lot of problems with the story. There are plot holes in the world, there are flat characters, a lot of the times the dialogue is stiff, the characters do not have unique voices, most of my sentences are all about the same length. In order to buy what happens in the story, you have to suspend your disbelief a little. I love the story, I think it's engaging, and it has a core conflict that I really love. But when I was writing it, I was still learning how to write, so it wasn't perfect. But it exists in its own imperfect way. But when I was learning how to write, I allowed myself to fail. To illustrate what I mean, here are some things that I wrote when I was first starting to write that were not winners. When I was 10, I wrote a story about a girl who had the ability to turn into an orca. This was going to be a book. It only ended up being about half a first chapter. I wrote a scene where my main character's dad drove her to the YMCA when nobody was there, and she jumped into the pool and turned into an orca inside the pool. It was a public pool, and she swam around for a little and then got out and turned back into a human. This was about as far into the story as I got. Another thing is that when I was 11, I was so obsessed with the Hunger Games that I wrote a story called Gladiator Girl about a girl named Catilla who needs to save her little sister Scylla from having to be a gladiator. She takes Scylla's place in these gladiator games in ancient Rome. She ends up falling in love with Julius Caesar, but I never made it that far into the book. I just remembered that I was really excited to get to that part. It was only a first chapter. Every single sentence of that chapter was modeled after a sentence in the first chapter of the Hunger Games. This was really an exercise in how to write first chapters. I wanted to feel how it felt to write a first chapter and really see how every sentence fit together in order to create and build a scene. Obviously, nobody ever read this and it died very quickly. This is a cutscene from my published novel. I had a scene in Imperfect where my main character went down to a secret lab in the basement of the creepy corporation headquarters and discovered a covert experiment where scientists were trying to create a new species called the Jagu chicken. It was part jaguar, part chicken, Jagu chicken, for absolutely no reason relevant to the plot. When I was 14, I read a post on Tumblr about a relationship where the boy in the relationship went off into the army and something happened to him and it was really sad and it was really heart-wrenching, and I got really sad after reading the Tumblr post, so I decided I was going to turn it into a novella. In my novella, there was a 16-year-old girl who fell in love with another boy, I guess 18-year-old, in her high school, and it was a really cute relationship until he went off to the army and something really sad happened to him, and she spent chapters and chapters and chapters crying. This is before I'd ever been in a relationship or kissed anybody or had any idea what anything was like, and it was really embarrassing, and I deleted it from my computer because I never wanted anyone to read it because it was awful. Everything was incredibly awkward. I can't even think about it. I also had a scene in Imperfect where all of the genetic testing people had to compete in a series of trials, and all the people who were not competing in the trials had to go sit and watch their friends compete in the trials in like a movie theater. Like they would just like go be ushered into the movie theater and they would have to like sit there and watch all of their friends like fight each other in the trials. There were like aisles and seats. And then my main character is sitting in this movie theater and she sees her best friend going up to do her trial, and her best friend gets her head cut off while she watches it in a movie theater. I can go on, but the point I'm trying to make here is that writing is a process. Now, my books are better. I promise. But it took me writing all of those things to realize how to make my writing better. When I wrote something and realized what was wrong with that thing, I was able to apply what I learned from that thing to the next thing that I wrote. Because you don't get better at writing by thinking about it and watching videos. You get better at writing by doing it. Perfectionism hurts your writing, especially at the beginning stages. It's great to try to make your book as good as you can make it, but it's another thing to freeze up and panic and agonize over every single little thing, because it's gonna make you feel like you're not good enough. You are good enough now, and you have the capacity to grow. Focus on writing your story and edit it to be the best that you can make it right now, and then go focus on making the next thing that you write even better. Also, be shameless when talking about your writing. Don't be shy and hide and say that your stories aren't good. Sure, your first book might not be the best book in the world, but guess what? Nobody's books are perfect. Even the writers that you see on YouTube struggle with things. Even really famous authors, their books aren't perfect. Everybody struggles with writing a book because writing a book is hard. Every book has mistakes in it, or things that it could have done better in the eyes of certain people. Your absolute favorite book in the world is not everybody's absolute favorite book in the world. Writing is art, and art is subjective. Just tell your story from your heart and focus on making it as good as you can, but not perfect. Also, what sets you up for success as a writer is not how good your first book is, but rather how ferociously you pursue writing. If you write a lot and you never give up, then you're gonna succeed. But also, success is a very abstract concept. You have to determine your goals for yourself, and you have to work towards them. It's all about persistence. And by success, I'm not talking about writing X number of words a day. I've heard a lot of people say that the more words you write a day, the more serious of a writer you are. I think that's dumb. Don't worry about how many words you write per day, unless you want to write a specific number of words every day. And also, you know why you want to write that many words a day. I like writing fast, I like writing in sprints, I like trying to get as many words on the page as possible because it makes me feel like I'm getting closer to achieving my goals. But I have days where it's just not happening for me. Does that make me any less of a dedicated writer? No. And the last thing I want to say to you all is to please remember that all advice that you hear on YouTube is just that. It's advice. It is not the end-all be-all truth of writing. Even writers who are wildly successful don't know the end-all be-all truths of writing. They can only tell you what worked for them. What worked for them is not necessarily going to work for you, but it might, and it's worth trying, because you need to figure out exactly what your authentic writing process is and how you want to write them. There is no correct way to write. Just write your story and fail and write another story, or write that same story again. You will learn from your failures. I promise it will make you better. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel for more writing how-tos and vlogs coming your way every Monday. My name is Claire Fraze. I'm an award-winning young adult author who uses this channel to give you my writing tips and tell you what worked for me. Don't forget to connect with me on social media. I'm on all of the regular platforms and all of my links are in the description. Have a good week, everybody, and happy writing.